All right, welcome back. In video one, we separated the idea of premise from conclusion. Now we're going to become more precise with the statements themselves. So this lesson is going to introduce three fundamental ideas: prepositions, truth values, and negations. Okay. So it's going to introduce prepositions, truth values, and negations. All right. So a preposition is a statement that is either true or false. Okay. And that definition matters. For something to be a proposition, it must make a claim that can be assigned a truth value, right? So, for example, when I say that God exists, that can be assigned a value. I can say, for example, clean your room. Notice how that doesn't have a truth or false value system because that's essentially a question. Can you please clean your room? Or even if I said go clean your room, which would be a statement. So it could be formed as a question or a statement, but it does not have a value, truth value system. All right. It does not have a point system like truth or truth or false. Okay. So a truth value is simply the classification of true or false. A negation is a statement that reverses the true value of another statement. So if the original statement is represented by, for example, P, then the negation would be not P. Okay. So again, this would be, if this was true, the negation would be not true or essentially false. Okay. And we will represent that by this symbol means not. So if the first preposition is true, the negation of it would be not P or not true, which would mean it would be false. Okay. So a negation, the statement that reverses the truth value of another statement. So it goes from true to false. Or if the preposition was false, it would go from false to true. All right. All right. That's how we understand that. And then we have the symbol not P, that's the negation of proposition P, as I mentioned, and then double negation not P has the same truth value as P. So if we go not P, that would essentially going back to true. So it's kind of like saying, let's just say the first proposition is P and it's true. If we said not P, well, that would be false. And then if we said not P, that would take it back to a true statement. Okay. Let's go ahead and begin with example number one. Okay. Classify propositions. All right. So we have three statements. First, the city population is 140,000. Is this a proposition? Yes. Okay. That is a proposition. Why? Because it makes a claim. The city population is 140,000 because it can be substantiated. Is that true or not true? Right? It is making a factual claim. If the population either is 140,000 or it is not. Therefore, the statement has a truth value. Okay. Now, we may not know the truth value immediately, but it still has one. Now, let's consider the next one. Okay, so this is premise number one. Premise number two: vote today. Right? Is that a proposition? No. Okay, so this second statement is not a proposition. I'm just using this as a placeholder here because this is like the second part of the sentence here. But this is a proposition, and vote today is not a proposition. Okay. So just understand that vote today is not a proposition because it does not have a value system. That's a command. If I said vote today, notice it like is it true or false? You can't really discern it, right? So that's a command. It does not make a claim that can be that can be classified as true or false. And then finally, is inflation falling? That's a question, not a proposition. Okay, so the the part three of this would be a question. Okay, So that is not a proposition either. An answer to the question could form a proposition, but the question is not one. Okay. So we'll say the first line, the city is a proposition. Okay. And then vote today is not a proposition, it's a command. Then is inflation falling? That is not a proposition either because it is a question. Okay. All right. Example number 2, write a precise negation. Okay. So let P be every precinct reported by 9 p.m. So we need the logical negation of that. So a common mistake is to write something vague like not really, or maybe they didn't, or to go so far and say that no precinct reported by 9 p.m. But that's not the negation. The original proposition is that every precinct reported by 9 p.m. Every precinct reported by 9 p.m. For that statement to be false, we don't need every precinct to fail. We only need one exception. So therefore, the negation of P would be at least one precinct did not report by 9 p.m., right? Because if they're saying that every precinct reported by 9 p.m., I can disprove them by only finding one precinct. I don't have to go and track down every single precinct. All I need is one to prove them wrong. Okay? But notice the relationship. Every precinct and at least one. Okay. So just notice the relationship. When you're negating every precinct, you only need at least one to disprove it. Okay. All right. Try the problem at the bottom. All right. So this says the statement is all economists support the proposal. Okay. Now, and then it says uh, explain why no economists support it, okay, is too strong. So the original claim says all economists support the proposal. For this statement to be false, what must happen to this? We need at least one economist who does not support it, right? All economists support the proposal, right? People speaking in absolute terms. Well, all people say this, all people say that, most people say this, most people say that. Well, the negation is all you have to do is find at least one economist who does not support the claim. That's all you need. You don't need every last one. You don't have to track down all economists. All you need to do is find at least one. So no economist support the proposal, right? The statement no economists support the proposal means something much stronger. And so that would mean that zero economists support it. If I negated all economists support the proposal, and I said, and the negation of that would be no economists support the proposal, that's too strong. That would mean that zero economists support it. But the original statement can be false even if 99% of economists support the proposal. Why? Because we can find 1%. One exception is enough to make this false. That's what you have to understand. This is why I always say that anyone who studies logic literally becomes an attorney overnight. Okay? Because that is why precise logical language matters. All right, let's continue. All right, example number 3. The report says a bill passed 52 to 48. We are going to evaluate essentially several statements. First of all, the bill passed, right? The evidence says that the vote was 52 to 48 in favor, right? Determine the truth value of the bill passed, the vote was unanimous, and their negations. All right, so the bill passed. Essentially, let me see. First off, the bill passed, and the evidence of that is 52 to 48 in favor. Therefore, the bill passed is true. Now, the vote was unanimous. All right. Was the vote actually unanimous? No, the vote was not unanimous. All right. All right. It was not unanimous. A unanimous vote will require everyone to vote the same way, but the result was 52 out of 48. So therefore, the vote was unanimous is false. That's false. That's a false claim, right? Now consider the negation of the bill passed. The negation is the bill did not pass because the original proposition is true. So therefore, its negation is false. Okay. Now let's take the vote for unanimous, right? So the vote for unanimous, right? That proposition is is false. Its negation is the vote was not unanimous. Well, that statement is true. So you got to understand something that if we have Q being false, which is their conclusion, right? And we're going to negate Q and that being true, negation reverses the truth value. Okay? Negation reverses the truth value as it should. Okay? Example number 4. Claim A says that every country gained population. Claim B says that at least one country did not gain population. And again, these statements are essentially logical negations, but it says explain why the claims are logical negations. So if claim A is true, that every single country gained population, then that would mean claim B must be false, right? Because it says claim B says that at least one country did not gain population. Okay. So there cannot be a country that failed to gain population. But if claim B is true, if every if even one country did not gain population, then what does that make claim A? It makes claim A false. So they cannot both be true. Okay? They cannot be true at the same time and in the same sense. Again, notice every, right? Every country becomes at least one country. That's how we can distinguish these two statements from one another. All right. And then lastly, a common mistake. So the original statement is the tax increased as the tax decreased. Correct the error and state all possibilities allowed by the proper negation. Okay. So again, this is incorrect, but the question is why? Because decreased introduces a new claim. The first claim was the tax increased, and then it says the tax decreased. So this introduces a very different claim than the first claim. If the tax did not increase, there are at least two possibilities. It could have increased or it could have not decreased, right? It could have decreased or it could have stayed, excuse me, it could have decreased or it could have stayed exactly the same as it was before. But the proper negation is simply that the tax did not increase. Correct the error and state all possibilities allowed. So the tax increased, correct the error and state all the possibilities by the proper negation. The proper negation of the tax increase is the tax did not increase. The statement includes every possibility in which the original statement is false. So remember, negation does not mean replace the original statement with its opposite extreme. Negation means state exactly what must be true when the original proposition is false. Okay. So in closing, this completes video 2. Your major ideas are a proposition has a truth value. Okay. Your proposition has a truth value, true or false. A truth value is true or false. A negation reverses the truth value. And a precise negation becomes especially important when statements use words such as all, every, at least one, none, at most. I mean, there's a lot of them. Okay. They go on and on essentially. Okay. But again, this completes the matching comparison problems. Excuse me. Please, as you're watching this video and as you watch all videos, make sure you are completing the corresponding example on the video companion sheet. And in video 3, we will begin combining propositions and organizing their truth values using something called truth tables. And again, thank you for watching.